Nihilism.
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 Nihilist.
Nihilist. Now, if we had a dime for every time that word has been uttered on this channel, we'd probably have enough money for a 2-topping pizza and a 6-pack of domestic beer. But for all the time we spent using nihilism as a tool to analyze film, TV, and culture, it still feels like we've barely scratched the surface. Now, for many, nihilism is just the negative vibe characterized by those who are black-pilled enough to think that everything sucks and nothing means anything. For others, it's a way to smugly judge those who use religion, philosophy, or politics to find meaning. And for others, it's a way of saying that there is no such thing as morality and ethics in our dark and lonely universe. So, which one is it? All of these? None of these? Something completely different? Well, let's find out in this Wisecrack Edition on nihilism. What is it? No, really, what is it? Okay, so a little personal story. When I was in grad school, I had a seminar with a professor named Andrew Benjamin, and one day we're sitting outside in the seminar and we're chatting about Nietzsche, and he brings up this idea that the constant misreadings of Nietzsche's writings on nihilism leads to, his words, angry 17-year-old atheist. Now, if you are or were an angry 17-year-old atheist, please be honest, let us know in the comments. Now, I think this speaks not only to how many of us, self included, interpret the meaning of nihilism, and especially the version we get in Nietzsche, but also how nihilism is represented in the media. Now, if you Google Wisecrack plus nihilism, you'll find that one of our most viewed videos ever, written by this asshole, is on nihilism in Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman. Because apparently, you all like Rick and Morty and nihilism. Who would have thought? Now, Rick is maybe the recent representation of a certain form of nihilism. He's a super smart rationalist who knows that God isn't real and that nothing means anything, which allows him to do all sorts of wild shit without any concern for higher meaning or purpose.
I'm a scientist because I invent, transform, create, and destroy for a living, and when I don't like something about the world, I change it.
Another example are the nihilists from The Big Lebowski, whose definition of nihilism is...
He believes in nothing. He believes in nothing, Lebowski, nothing.
And of course, there's the gang from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, whose antics seem to be motivated by a disbelief in any system or authority outside of themselves.
We don't know shit about chicks! We don't know shit about chicks!
But are they good representations of nihilism? Or are they just more angry 17-year-old atheists who misread Nietzsche? Now, I'm gonna get into it, but first, we gotta go through a quick list of the things that nihilism is definitely not. And these are from Nolan Gertz's recent book, aptly titled Nihilism, which I'll be referring to throughout this video. Now, according to Gertz, nihilism often gets confused with things like pessimism, cynicism, and apathy. But according to him, nihilism is thus much closer to optimism, idealism, and sympathy than it is to pessimism, cynicism, and apathy. And throughout the video, I'll show you why. But if you want to see his full argument, get his book. It's great. And getting books is great. You know, buy books, not drugs. But for now, let's get back to figuring out what nihilism is. For that, we need to take a second look at the history of the concept. While the idea of nothing has been around almost as long as the idea of something, nihilism was first written about in 1799 when German philosopher Friedrich Jacobi, in a letter criticizing Immanuel Kant, used the term to talk the latter's work. Jacobi thought that in Kant's attempt to refute the epistemological nihilism that you get in someone like David Hume, for whom actual knowledge of the world is impossible, his resulting philosophy ends up leading to a sort of practical nihilism, because his emphasis on the use of reason made faith way less important. In other words, Jacobi thought turning everything into an object of reason evacuates any human or spiritual meaning from philosophy and our lives. Soren Kierkegaard would make a similar critique about 50 years later. But for most, Kant isn't a good representation of nihilism because he still very much believes in morality and beauty, among other things. For real deal nihilism, we gotta wait until the 19th century, when we get the work of, say it with me friends,
Friedrich Nietzsche,
who really made the concept the celebrity that it is today. Nietzsche used it as both a critical concept, meaning he would argue that certain systems embody a type of nihilism that is bad, and a positive concept, as something that could be a tool in living one's life. One of his most succinct definitions of nihilism is that the highest values devalue themselves, which describes when systems purporting to offer meaning, purpose, and truth are in reality empty and soulless. pulling us further away from life and our own humanity. In another text, Nietzsche writes, "Nihilism, it is ambiguous. There is A, nihilism as a sign of increased power of the spirit as active nihilism, and B, nihilism as decline and recession of the power of the spirit as passive nihilism." This distinction between active and passive nihilism is one that we've talked about before, but it boils down to a nihilism that embraces the lack of meaning in a given system and creates meaning in its place, versus one that accepts the lack of meaning in a given system but acts like everything is normal. Now, to give the 17-year-olds credit, atheism does play into this. As Gertz argues, it was because Christianity inspires such questions that Nietzsche associates nihilism both with the claim that God is dead and with the claim that the highest values devalue themselves. Nietzsche absolutely thinks that the more powerful we make God, the less power we leave for ourselves. In this way, making us into passive nihilists.
Well, first of all, through God, all things are possible, so jot that down.
But unlike what our teenage Hot Topic regulars might believe, the solution to this problem isn't to simply embrace science and logic in a Rick Sanchez-esque way.
Am I evil?
Worse, you're smart. When you know nothing matters, the universe is yours. And I've never met a universe that was into it.
Gertz writes that Nietzsche argues that science is not the enemy of religion, but is instead a new religion, a new source of meaning with its own priests, rituals, sacred texts, and life-guiding values and ideals. Because much like religion can teach us that our human lives don't really matter much, science can convince us that all that really matters is data.
And what makes you think what your scientists are writing is any more truer than my saints?
Because there are volumes of proven data, numbers, figures.
Because whether it's religion or science or technology or social media that's doing the damage, anything that pulls us away from our own humanity is guilty of breeding nihilism. To again quote Gertz, discovering life is meaningless is not nihilism for Nietzsche. Rather, discovering life is meaningless and yet going on with our lives anyway is nihilism. It's sort of like knowing that the emperor has no clothes and then continuing to admire his robes anyways. On the other hand, discovering life is meaningless and using that as an opportunity to create new values is active nihilism for Nietzsche, aka the good kind. Now, Nietzsche went on to have a huge influence on schools of thought like existentialism and post-structuralism, and those schools have also been accused of being nihilist. The French existentialists of the 20th century got accused of nihilism by the French Catholic Church, who thought they were undermining belief in God and leaving their fellow cafe patrons with nothing to believe in. But according to Gertz, rather, the existentialists were trying to reveal that it is our belief in human nature that is nihilistic. For thinkers like de Beauvoir and Sartre, if we have an essence, then it comes from our decisions, not from any supernatural creator or genetic inheritance. So, like many accused of nihilism, the French existentialists were criticizing nihilist systems while arguing for a renewed sense of human meaning and the creation of value. In other words, active nihilism. Gertz writes that existentialism reveals that in trying to avoid responsibility, we end up avoiding freedom, and that in trying to avoid death, we end up avoiding life. This passive nihilism is thus seen as the result of our fear of death. And so the more we flee from death, the more nihilistic we become. As you might know, the motto for the existentialist was, "Existence precedes essence," meaning that we create ourselves via what we do. And in that way, we're responsible for creating meaning. Simone de Beauvoir, according to Gertz, conceives of nihilism as a radical disorder, as an attitude, as annihilation of oneself, and as a way to get rid of anxiety by denying existence. All of which she sums up by defining nihilism as disappointed seriousness turned back against itself. We see this disappointed seriousness in both the person who thinks that religion or science has ultimate agency in their existence, and the person who thinks that the world is so shitty that it's just not worth trying to do anything about it. If anxiety is caused by the awareness of our own responsibility for ourselves, this type of nihilism is a way to avoid anxiety by robbing ourselves of agency and responsibility.
It very clearly says in the Bible that gay marriage is wrong, okay? And I'm gonna show you. Where's our Bible?
Where's our Bible?
Where's our goddamn Bible?
Basically what we see in Always Sunny every time Mac uses religion as an excuse to not think for himself. So we know what nihilism is, and we know what it's not, but that still doesn't explain why so many of us are just so gosh darn attracted to it. Now, it could help us to consider the cultural conditions that accompany the work of folks like Nietzsche and the existentialist. In both cases, they were in societies dominated by the twin poles of religion, Lutheranism for Nietzsche, Catholicism for the existentialist, and the values of the European Enlightenment. And in both cases, the thinkers in question found these systems negating rather than affirming humanity. Or to paraphrase Nietzsche, the twin values of religion and Enlightenment reason devalue themselves. The existentialist also had the experience of World War II, which came after the war to end all wars and exhibited the barbarism and brutality hidden under the niceties of European modernity.
There are like so many medals in there, dude. This guy was probably like King Nazi.
So what might be the reasons for contemporary interest in nihilism? Well, in America, a country that is still dominated by Christianity, we've spent the last 30 or so years watching the political co-option of faith via right-wing evangelicals, which has led to everything from the destruction of women's rights.
We have experienced many decades now of having agency over our body, of being able to determine when and how many children to have. We know what that feels like. We know what that's done for our lives. We're not going back. I don't care what the laws are. We're not going back.
To Dwight from The Office tweeting about how Hollywood is suppressing Christians. We've also lived through 2 wars in the Middle East that happened because, George Bush and his dad were doing some type of father-son bonding. Also 9/11.
9/11, 9/11, what went down with Building 7?
And the 2008 economic collapse, which seems to be continually proving itself to be like a fart that keeps slowly letting out gas long after you heard the initial noise.
We get a hefty loan to buy a bunch of gasoline. We take that gasoline, we store it in the basement, we wait a few months, when the gas prices skyrocket, we sell it, make a huge profit.
And this has all happened in tandem with the rise of new forms of news, media, and entertainment that feel increasingly designed to keep us distracted as possible, while both getting as much data from us as possible, and then using that data to very specifically target us to buy more things. This is why back in the 19th century, Kierkegaard was already worried that the media would slowly suck all the passion and meaning out of life. Goethe writes, "So rather than providing us experiences of real life, radio and television provide us with a pseudo-reality, events staged for mass consumption, that we can pseudo-experience consumption from our couches in our pseudo-lives, consuming near others rather than being with others." If you want to consume with others, though, check out Wisecrack Live. It's our stream. We do it on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Pacific. And I know it sounds like I'm being sarcastic right now, but we have a great chat, and we've all become friends. So, I don't know, fight nihilism, watch Wisecrack Live. Gertz goes on to say, in the era of binge watching and handheld screens, the business of escapism, the business of keeping people staring at screens, is only getting more and more successful.
And now we're back to How Did I Get Here? The only show that makes you ask yourself, how did I get here?
This is the very modern nihilist mood that we feel when watching a show like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. As a group of people so broken by modern American life are completely out of touch with their own humanity and the humanity of others. And while calling the characters themselves nihilists might be a bit reductive, the show seems to be an indictment of a culture that produces Dennis's, Max, D's, and Charlie's. We can blame the nihilism of the post-Vietnam War era for Frank's own philosophical brand.
I didn't go to Vietnam just to have pansies like you take my freedom away from me.
You went to Vietnam in 1993 to open up a sweatshop.
And a lot of good men died in that sweatshop.
When there is nothing else to believe in, you might as well just get drunk with your friends and do whatever in the hell gets you off, even if it's at the expense of, basically everyone else, and especially Rickety Cricket.
Cricket, get him.
In the more earnest moments of Rick and Morty, we see something similar in Rick, a character fueled by a passive nihilism, with no belief in his own humanity or the humanity of others.
Don't ever make fun of me again, ever!
It could even be argued that Rick's rejection of humanity is just a reflection of the rejection of humanity in a world that would rather have us glued to our apps than trying to embrace our individual lives. And while some of these examples of nihilism might look kind of fun or sexy or badass, the best example might be in the 1999 film Office Space.
I should be able to listen to the radio while I'm collating, so I don't see why I should have to turn down the radio because I enjoy listening at a reasonable volume.
Thanks.
If you haven't seen it, Seriously, why not? It's so good. Please do the thing where you pause and watch it and come back. That'd be fun. And if you actually do that, let me know. Now, it's the story of a group of individuals working for a tech company and wasting their lives staring at screens, entering data, and wondering if there's anything else out there.
We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS reports.
Nihilism in this case is produced by the mundanity of an economic system that presents work as the most meaningful thing that we can do, while we know that most jobs are fundamentally meaningless and often inhuman.
We need to talk about your flair.
Really? I have 15 pieces on.
Well, okay, 15 is the minimum.
As Gertz writes, if we spend a third of our lives sleeping, and we spend our time at work trying to put ourselves to sleep, then for most of our lives, we aren't just acting like zombies. We are zombies. Let me know in the comments which level of zombie you're at these days. Which goes well with Office Space, as when the protagonist Peter wakes up, it's like he's leaving his zombie state and becoming a human again. But to become human, he has to look the empty system right in the face and reject it, choosing the path of active nihilism instead of the easier path of passive nihilism. It might feel like this type of nihilism is indicative of contemporary American life, but interestingly and depressingly enough, de Beauvoir noticed this about America during a trip to the land of the free in 1947. She writes, "What is most striking to me and most discouraging is that they are so apathetic while being neither blind nor unconscious. They witness the rise, more ominous every day, of racism and reactionary attitudes, the birth of a kind of fascism. But they themselves don't feel responsible for anything because they don't think they can do anything in this world. In America, the individual is nothing. He is made into an abstract object of worship. By persuading him of his individual value, one stifles the awakening of a collective spirit in him. But reduced to himself in this way, he is robbed of any concrete power." Again, she wrote that in 1947. So maybe America has always been a beacon for a type of deeply ingrained passive nihilism, and our mixture of empty individualism and free market brains have turned us into a culture of nihilist zombies, and maybe there's no way out, which is real great stuff.
Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
But what do you guys think? Is nihilism the mood of our era? Does every generation have its own nihilist core? Or is it just all a way for whiny philosophers to complain that the world isn't structured how they want it to be? Let us know in the comments. And please let us know if you liked this style of video. We've hesitated for a long time to make videos that are just explicitly philosophical, where we dive into ideas like this. So if you dig this, it's really important that you let us know. And if you want us to make more, it's important that you let us know what topics you would like to see us cover. So please do that. Thanks as always to our patrons for creating a community of active nihilism that I really enjoy being a part of. You can check out our Patreon by clicking the link in the description. But thanks to all of you for joining us, for sticking around for this whole journey, for engaging with our content, because you know it helps us stay alive. So thank you so much for that. But in the meantime, stay nihilist in the good way, and I'll see you later.